Good heavens! Old widow Amma has just laid eyes on the very thing the entire village swore never to speak of. Amid the thunderous storm, a woman with the upper body of a human and the tail of a fish lay entangled in the net, her golden scales blazing like fire beneath the water. The stench of mud and salt fused into the swamp's breath, while that faint song slowly dissolved into the wind. "Please, save my child," the mermaid begged, her eyes shining like fallen stars. When Amma lifted the infant, its skin flashed gold for a moment before vanishing, leaving behind a dying whisper. "If water ever touches its feet, I will fade forever." That night, beside the ink-black current, a curse was born and a mother's love began. But will love be strong enough to defy the call of the deep? Long ago, in an old African-American community deep in the Louisiana bayou, where frog croaks mingled with church bells and the scent of palm oil drifted on the wind, there lived a quiet woman named Amma Ni on the very edge of the water. Her little shack stood on damp ground, roofed with dry palmetto leaves, walls speckled with moss and smoke. She had once had a husband, a fisherman lost to the Great Flood years before, leaving Amma alone with calloused hands, a cracked clay jug, and a longing to hear a child's voice inside her home. Every day, she sold palm oil, dry firewood, and wildflowers picked around the swamp, living as slowly as the breath of the water itself. That night, clouds rolled in from the sea, heavy with salt. Rain fell in long threads, striking the cracked earth, the palm roof, the hearts of the living. Amma threw a rough shawl over her shoulders, took her empty jug, and walked toward the river. The rain poured as if the sky meant to wash every sin from the world. Beneath flashes of lightning, the muddy path seemed to melt away. Crickets fell silent. Only rain and the thud of her heart remained. She did not yet know that, this night, the water had chosen her. As Amma reached the riverbank, a blinding golden light flared through the downpour. At first she thought it was lightning mirrored on the surface. But no, this light moved, soft and alive, like the breath of something living. There on the wet sand lay a creature, half woman, half fish, writhing in pain. Her scales caught each lightning bolt and threw back 1,000 sparks, molten gold. Long black hair lay matted with mud and reeds, yet her face gaunt as it was held a beauty that hushed even the storm. Amma froze. The jug slipped from her fingers and shattered. The mermaid gasped, each breath a dying wind. A ribbon of red swirled around her body, diluting into the rain the color of pale gold. Her eyes opened, clouded like a fading moon. In trembling arms, she cradled a bundle of seaweed. Inside lay a tiny infant, skin flushed pink, eyes closed, body dusted with fine golden motes like scattered sunlight. Amma sank to her knees, her breath mingling with the breath of the water. She had never believed the old tales of river spirits, of fish-tailed women who sang children to sleep on rainy nights. But now every story stood before her, vivid and broken. The rain thinned, the world's sounds stretched long and far, leaving only heartbeats and the salt dissolving in the wind. The mermaid lifted her head with the last of her strength. Her lips parted, her voice was wind through leaves, a plea thinner than breath itself. Amma could not catch every word, only the sacred weight pressing against her chest. She leaned in and took the child. The moment her hands touched that skin, heat surged through her, and golden light burst around the infant like a small flame. The glow sank into the flesh and vanished, leaving an ordinary human baby breathing faintly, heart slow but steady. The mermaid smiled, tired, relieved. The rain eased, the wind quieted, the river surface stilled as though listening. One final bolt of lightning split the sky, and in that instant, her golden eyes locked with Amma's, burning a promise, a curse. Her last breath drifted into the air, words fading like morning mist. If water ever touches the child's feet, the mother's blood will turn to ash. Then she melted. Not suddenly, but slowly, as if dissolving into the river itself, each golden scale drifting down, each drop of light sinking away. Only flecks of golden foam remained, gliding off with the current, leaving a cold hollow inside Amma's chest. She lifted the child, arms shaking, feeling that tiny warmth pressed against her heart. She looked around, only river, rain, and the iron smell of lightning. The final words echoed in her mind, like an invisible chain. Yet, beneath the fear, something else stirred. The feeling of being called to be a mother. For the first time in her life, her heart had a reason to beat. Amma wrapped the baby in her shawl, shielding it from the rain, and started home. Mud clung to her feet, the path heavy with destiny, but she walked. At the doorway she glanced back. Lightning flashed once more, and she saw a ribbon of gold ripple across the water like silk. Though rain still poured, the river glowed as if smiling, as if promising something she did not yet understand. That night, Amma laid the child in the old bamboo cradle she had kept for empty years. She lit the lamp, wiped mud from its brow, and studied the tiny sleeping face, lips fluttering lips. Whenever the flame flickered, the baby's skin caught a soft golden sheen. She touched its little hand. Warmth traveled up her wrist, into her chest. Terror and reverence flooded her until tears slid down her cheeks. Outside, the rain stopped. Frogs began to sing again. Water dripped from the roof to earth, mingling with the night's chill. Amma sat for hours watching the trembling lamp, her heart full of questions without answers. The water had chosen her. The child had chosen her. Yet the mermaid's words, "If water touches the child's feet, the mother's blood will turn to ash," rang like a distant bell. At dawn, mist hung thick over the swamp. On Amma's arm, she noticed a small red mark where rainwater had run while she carried the baby. It burned. For an instant, she thought she saw golden scales flash beneath her skin. She scrubbed frantically, but the mark remained. The baby cried, a clear sound like a drop of water. Amma looked at her child, clenched her fists, and whispered to herself, "I will raise you. Even if the water comes to claim you, I will keep you with my very soul." That morning, no one in the village knew that. The night before, beside the Black River, a golden being had passed away, and a new thread of fate had been woven between human and water, between mother and child, between love and punishment. Amma named the baby Nia, meaning purpose, in the old tongue she still remembered. She spoke the name softly, afraid the wind might steal it, and from that day on, her life and the life of the little village beside the Golden River would never be the same again. Summer sun poured over the Louisiana swamp like a sheet of hammered gold, flashing across countless palmetto fronds, banana leaves, and twisted roots rising from black mud. From the little shack on the water's edge came the steady thunk-thunk of a pestle, pounding palm oil, blending with the slap of kingfisher wings. Amma and I had grown used to a household of two, one old, one young, one bound to earth, the other tied to something deeper, vaguer, something that belonged to water. Nia grew like tender grass after rain. Her skin was smooth, warm, brown. Yet whenever light struck her wrists or cheeks, tiny flecks of gold shimmered like pollen. Amma saw it but said nothing. She only tugged the child's bonnet lower, shielding her from curious village eyes. Since bringing the baby home, Amma rarely left the swamp. When neighbors asked, "How do you keep on living after your husband was taken?" she only smiled and kept Nia hidden behind her back like a private prayer. Every morning, Amma rose before the roosters, kindled wet charcoal, boiled water for palm oil while Nia sat on the bamboo bench singing soft melodies no one had taught her. The voice was clear, fragile, carrying all the way to the water's edge. Birds paused mid-flight, the breeze leaned in to listen. Each note tugged an invisible thread from Amma's chest, straight to the river. Water in the broken jars rippled and answered. At first, Amma tried to forget the curse. She told herself the spirits could not be cruel to someone who had done a kindness. Then came the day everything changed. One stifling afternoon, while Nia played with frogs on the grassy bank, a sudden gust swept through. The child slipped and splashed into the shallow edge. Amma screamed, dropped to her knees, plunged her arm in and yanked Nia out. The water was ice cold, but what froze her blood was the burning heat that raced across her skin. When she looked, her hand was swelling, angry red like glowing coals. Pain nearly took her under, yet Nia's wide, terrified eyes kept her conscious. She clutched the child and ran home. every stray droplet that touched her arm leaving a streak like lightning. Inside the shack, she set Nia down and stared at her own hand. Between her fingers, pale golden scales flickered, then dissolved into smoke. That night, Amma did not sleep. The oil lamp burned low. Her heart pounded. She watched Nia sleep peacefully, face glowing softly. There was no doubt left, the curse was real. From then on, Amma feared water more than death. When rain came, she barred the door and draped cloth over every water jar, as if the mere sight of the river might wake the curse. Nia kept growing, carefree as any child. She learned to speak, to walk, to laugh. But to Amma, every joy carried terror. When Nia darted toward the yard, Amma called her back. When she heard water trickling, Amma pulled her close. Each night, she kept the child pressed against her side, rough hand stroking soft black hair. Nia dreamed of water, dreamed of gold, and sometimes sang in her sleep, waking Amma with tears soaking the pillow. Time passed, and whispers crept out of the swamp. People said Amma's little girl was strange, that when she passed the well, the water lit up like moonlight lived inside it. They said she talked to fish, that her stare made other children shiver. Amma heard, bowed her head, and kept selling palm oil in silence. She had no strength left to explain, no courage to beg. When anyone asked, she answered only, "She is my blessing." One blazing noon, while Amma sat shelling palm nuts in the shade, Nia rolled in the yard laughing with a puppy. A damp breeze drifted from the river. Nia ran to the big water jar and peered in. The surface shimmered, and there appeared the face of a woman, long hair, shining eyes, faint smile. Nia leaned closer. For an instant, the face seemed to sing her name in a voice like far-off chorus strings. Amma saw it, lunged, yanked Nia backward. The jar tipped. Water spilled. A few drops struck Amma's foot, and pain seared like flame. She looked down. The skin there had already turned ash gray. Nia wailed, not understanding. Amma held her tight, shaking, whispering prayers to God, to ancestors, to the river itself. But the curse waited, silent and patient, simply waited. After that day, Amma wrapped her feet in thick cloth, even in the heat. She walked slower, eyes dimming. Villagers said she had aged overnight, but no one knew that every night she sat by the lamp, cutting fresh rags, listening to distant water, and feeling her heart twist. Love and fear had melted together inside her. She could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. Whenever Nia sang, Amma heard the river in her voice. When she laughed, fine gold dust seemed to fall across her shoulders like sunlight. Amma knew no matter how hard she tried, she could not stop what was coming. Yet a mother's love made her stubborn. She swore to herself she would keep her child from water, from fate, even if it meant giving up every remaining day of her own life. One late afternoon, sky the color of burnished copper, Amma sat on the porch watching blue cook smoke rise. Nia beside her cut banana leaves into fish shapes and blew them sailing on the breeze. Her laughter rang clear as spring water. Even the egrets paused above the marsh. Amma smiled. For that one moment, she forgot the burns, forgot the pain, felt only peace as sunlight striped through the bamboo wall and painted gold across her daughter's cheek. But when night fell and the frogs began their chorus, Amma glimpsed a golden glint bobbing far out on the river, an eye watching. She rose, shut the window, and whispered into the dark, "Please, not yet. Give her a little more time to be human." That night, the wet leaves hissed with wind, carrying a faint song rising from the river's heart. Nia smiled in her sleep, lips moving softly. Amma sat beside her, rough hands clenched together, terrified yet grateful, because tonight, at least, her child was still in her arms. Summer slipped by in the swamp's wet light, steam rising like an invisible shawl around everything. Life in the riverside village moved slow as an oar stroked through night water. Children learned letters in the old chapel schoolhouse. Women rendered palm oil, men patched boats. In that quiet rhythm, Nia grew like a lone star in a sky heavy with mist. Each year, she became more strangely beautiful, until people hesitated before looking straight at her. Something in her eyes drew them close and pushed them away at the same time. Early mornings, When Amma shouldered her baskets to market, Nia padded barefoot behind her on the damp path. Wind carried the smell of ripe palm fruit, coconut oil, and cook smoke. The girl's clear, ringing calls made shoppers pause just to watch her. When she smiled, sunlight seemed to tilt and spill across the oil in the bottles. But behind the admiring glances came whispers, low as snakes in grass. They said she was different, that something in her blood did not belong to humankind. Amma heard every word yet kept her face calm. She knew the village had never forgotten the stormy night 17 years ago, when she walked home carrying a baby. Back then they only stared and asked nothing. Time, though, had grown their curiosity into something darker. They murmured, "That child never cried in thunder. Her eyes shine like river jewels, as if the water itself looks out from inside her." Little by little, the stories became forbidden things, spoken in hushed voices. Nia never asked her mother, but she heard everything. She felt eyes follow her through the market, felt the widening space between her and the other children. Afternoons, she still went with the girls to the well, but when she leaned over to draw water, the surface rippled without wind, and the girls stepped back with small cries, as if they had seen something unlucky. Nia only smiled, bit her lip to keep it from trembling, then silently lifted the heavy bucket and walked away. Amma saw it all. She grew quieter, spoke less, yet the fear inside her never shrank. She began to feel a change in the air itself. Whenever Nia washed her hands or rinsed her hair, a chill traveled across the room to Amma, and the old scars burned. She hid them under thicker cloth, checking only in the dead of night. The gray patches were spreading, slowly, spreading, as though the river were sending messages from the far bank. Nia still tried to be ordinary. She helped render oil, split firewood, sang softly by the fire. Her voice made sparrows hover above the roof. It made passers-by slow their steps. People claimed her singing raised the well water higher, made trapped fish thrash harder. Amma paused in her work, looked at her daughter with pride and unending dread. She understood. That voice was not entirely human. Some mornings, before the mist burned off, Nia sat at the window staring at the river. The surface lay flat as a mirror, yet far out in the marsh, she could see a faint golden glint, like a single scale catching light. When the breeze stirred, the glint pulsed, breathing. She closed her eyes and heard a melody that belonged to no church hymn or village song, soft as silk, deep as the riverbed. It made her want to lean in and run away at the same time. One day, while Amma was at market, Nia stayed home alone. She heard water trickling just beyond the porch, steady as someone tapping time. She opened the door. The river gleamed, threads of gold spread across it like strands of dying sunset. On the bank, a large fish flopped, not in panic but in invitation. Nia walked slowly forward, feet sinking into warm mud. The instant her toes touched the thin film of water on the ground, a voice called inside her head, her mother's voice, faint but stern, coming from very far away. She jerked back, heart pounding, hands shaking. When Amma returned, she said nothing, only stared at the mud on Nia's feet, fear plain in her eyes. That night she lit an extra lamp, as if more light could keep something outside the door. In the soft crackle of burning oil, she heard the river murmuring, talking in its sleep. Slowly, the whispers turned into shared fear. Some blamed Nia for the flood that year, for the fish that floated dead along the banks. An old woman at market swore she saw Nia look into the well and the water steamed away. People began to avoid Amma's house. Children stopped coming to play. Customers grew scarce. Amma still carried her baskets to market, still smiled, but her shoulders thinned and her hair grayed in the oil smoke. One night, rain returned, filling the house with the smell of mud and rot. Nia lay curled against her mother, listening to distant thunder. Amma stroked her hair, heart in knots. She remembered that long-ago stormy night, the gold dissolving into foam, the dying words, "If water touches her feet, the mother's blood will turn to ash." The sentence rang clearer than ever. She felt a thin cord stretched between them, tightening whenever Nia dreamed of water. The girl had become a young woman now, soft curves, deep eyes, long hair. Amma looked at her and knew this world would not hold her much longer. Some destinies begin with the very first drop that touches skin. The rain eased, the night grew still. Amma rose, lit the lamp, stepped onto the porch. The river ran high. Moonlight laid a silver ribbon across it. In the middle something moved, a figure. Or only memory playing tricks? She couldn't tell. She only felt the old mixture rise inside her, sacred and foretelling loss. She went back in. Nia slept on, peaceful in the lamplight. Amma sat on the bed's edge, took her daughter's hand soft as water and held it. She formed no words aloud, only let her heart speak. If you are water, I will be the bank. If you are light, I will be the night to keep you. But she knew banks cannot hold water forever, and every night dissolves at dawn. Outside, frogs called in waves. The river flowed on neither hurried nor slow, counting the heartbeats of the two women in the little house, where the curse lay quiet, waiting for the day it would wake. As the rainy season began, thunder rolled like the drums of heaven and earth. The river behind Amma's house swelled, slowly coiling beneath thick mist. The water ran thick and muddy, heavy with the smell of algae, yet when sunlight struck it, a fierce golden glow rose that no one could explain. Many said the river was strange this year. Light clung to its surface. Schools of fish rose in dense silver clouds, then vanished in a blink as though someone below had called them home. Amma heard the talk, lowered her head, and knew the bad omen was drawing near. In the first nights of the season, Nia dreamed. She stood beside a boundless expanse of water, not river, not sea, but the place where two worlds touched. Golden ribbons of light, like comet tails, curled around her, and a voice distant, warm, called her name in syllables no human tongue had ever shaped. Each time she woke, tears wet her cheeks, though she did not know why. Amma lay beside her, watching by the dying lamp, heart clenched tight. She knew the river was remembering its child. Day after day, the little village lived half in belief, half in fear. Every night someone claimed to see golden light moving beneath the surface, to hear childlike laughter drifting through the fog. An old man poling across swore his paddle was seized, and when he wrenched it free, the blade bore glowing marks like fish scales. Villagers burned incense, hung charms around their doors, begged the river spirit not to be angry. Yet their fear, though they did not know it, only roused the water more. Amma kept Nia inside as much as she could. She sealed the water jars, draped thick cloth over the windows, forbade her daughter to look toward the river. But the more she forbade, the stronger Nia's curiosity grew. Each evening the golden glow seeped through the weave of the cloth, and painted shimmering fingers stroked Nia's face. Deep inside her blood she felt a low drumming, steady as a far-off heart that was not her own. She said nothing, afraid to worry her mother, yet she knew. Something was calling, and the call felt older than her birth. Then one day, just as the sun slipped away and crickets began their song, Nia walked alone to the riverbank. The water lay flat as a giant mirror, reflecting the crimson sky. She sat, gazed at her reflection, and saw it ripple though no wind blew. A pair of golden eyes appeared, not hers, deeper, older, rising from another layer of water. Nia's breath caught. Her heart pounded, yet she could not look away. The gaze was tender, aching, full of longing. Then the surface shattered into 1,000 golden rays that rose and shaped themselves into a young man. Long hair, bronze-dark skin, strong shoulders. He stood in the river, moonlight born into flesh, gold light pouring over him. Nia inhaled sharply. In that instant, a wordless voice pulsed inside her mind, beating in perfect time with her own heart. He did not step onto the bank. He only looked at her for a long, long moment, then melted back into the water and left widening rings that kissed her feet. She did not know if it had been real or dream, but an ancient ache suddenly filled her chest. When she returned home, her feet were caked with sand, and Amma smelled salt on her clothes. That same night, Amma dreamed of Nyasha, the golden-scaled mermaid of long ago. Her hair floated loose, scales blazing until the whole river seemed on fire. Her voice drifted through the dream, soft as breeze. The hour is near. My daughter remembers me. Amma woke, drenched in sweat. When she looked at her legs, the gray patches had spread farther, as though hidden fire burned beneath the skin. She knew the water was finding its way back, and once it came, it would never turn aside. Far below, in the kingdom of coral and light, Prince Khalil sat motionless on a throne of giant pearl shell. A crown of living gold rested on his brow. The scales on his shoulders flickered like 1,000 candles. For years he had heard that singing, clear, heartbreaking, rising through the water each night. When the old river began to change color, he understood. The one promised to him had awakened. Khalil left the palace, swam through thick forests of kelp and swaying seagrass. Beneath the pale glow of plankton, he followed trails of light like remembered footprints. He recalled his mother, the queen's words. When she sings, the water will reclaim its soul. You must go to her. Your blood is the same blood. Ever since, Khalil had lingered just beneath the surface, gazing up at the trembling mortal light above. The final night before the great rain, the river rose until it lapped at Amma's porch. She woke in the dark and saw gold fire spread across the water, bright enough to seem the river itself was burning. She fell to her knees, begging the ancestors to shield Nia from what was coming. But deep inside, she knew it was useless. Prayers were only palm leaves carried off by the current. The old curse could not be broken by tears. Inside the house, Nia sat at the window, eyes fixed on the river. The golden glow filled her pupils until they burned like twin pieces of amber. She did not know what she waited for, only that every cell in her body strained forward, listening to the river's heartbeat matching her own. A breeze carried the scent of salt and palm blossom. Nia closed her eyes, and for the first time the childhood melody she had always hummed rose clear and powerful inside her, the true song of her own blood. Amma stepped to the doorway and saw her daughter bathed in that strange gold, face radiant. She tried to speak, her throat closed. Nia turned, smiled gently, and in that smile, Amma understood. The river had found its child. High above, thunder growled. Beneath the surface, waves rose softly, carrying the promise of fate. Early autumn sky hung low, river steam rising thick as smoke. The whole village seemed to float inside a damp dream where every sound came muffled through wet cloth. In those days, Amma smelled of salt and gold. Light seemed to seep straight out of the ground. Amma knew the season of water had truly arrived. Nia still walked quietly to market with her mother, but her eyes held something far away, as if every glance at the river was a glance into her own soul. One misty morning, while fog still blanketed the paths, a stranger appeared at the market. No one knew where he came from. He was tall, skin the color of dark bronze, black curls wet as though he had just stepped out of rain. His eyes were calm, yet when sunlight struck them, something flashed gold, like fish scales beneath the surface. People learned his name was Khalil, that he drifted from place to place mending boats. His voice was low and slow, unhurried, unafraid, the way water pours over stone. At first, no one paid much mind, until Khalil stopped in front of Amma's stall. Then they noticed how he looked at Nia, not the stare of a curious outsider, but the gaze of someone who had known her long before this life. That look made Nia lower her eyes. A strange warmth rose in her, familiar and distant at once, like a memory from a dream. Amma saw it. She said nothing, only narrowed her deep eyes. A chill slid down her spine, the same chill she felt when wind passed over graves. In the days that followed, the stranger was always there, never too close, never too far. He often sat by the landing, rolling a cigarette, watching wooden boats glide past, eyes following the current. Whenever Nia came to market, he stood among the crowd, silent, but sometimes their gazes met and the world slowed. Market noises, calls, laughter all faded, leaving only the salt breath of the river. Amma stopped sleeping. She feared the man, but she feared even more what was growing inside her daughter. Each night, while Nia slept, Amma crept to the window, parted the curtain, and looked out. The golden glow still floated on the water, but now a tall figure stood there too, motionless, sometimes bending as if listening. She told no one. She knew no one would believe her. The village already watched mother and daughter with suspicion. Whispers had cracked the old trust wide open. One late afternoon, after the stall was packed away, Nia walked the narrow path along the river. Sunset scattered soft gold across the water, so beautiful it hurt to breathe. She stopped when she saw Khalil sitting under the willow. He did not look at her, only at the river. She did not know why her feet carried her closer. The breeze carried faint salt, and the cool mist felt like a whisper. When only a few paces remained, Khalil rose. Sunlight passed through him, revealing a hidden golden shimmer deep in his skin, veiled yet unmistakable, like soul light. He turned. Those eyes met hers, deep and quiet, and for a moment she forgot she was breathing. No words were spoken. Wind lifted the hem of her dress. Khalil bowed his head, the way one greets a loved one long absent. Then he turned and walked into the mist, leaving wet footprints that glimmered faintly on the sand. Long after he vanished, Nia stood rooted, chest aching, as though she had just lost something priceless. That night, she dreamed she walked the riverbank beneath a golden moon that shattered into 1,000 pieces raining onto the water. From the light, Khalil stepped forward, hand extended. "I am still here," his voice said inside her mind, not spoken, but beating with her blood. She reached out. The water surged, pulled him away. She woke gasping, soaked in sweat, heart racing. From the porch, Amma heard her daughter's ragged breathing and raised a silent prayer. The next day, the village buzzed. Someone swore they had seen the stranger standing in mid-river under moonlight, water rising around him yet never touching his clothes. An old woman insisted he was the river's own spirit come to claim what was lost. Fear and fascination braided together. Beneath the heavy smell of algae, rumors spread like wildfire. Amma felt it clearly. The villagers' silence turned into distance. At market, they bought from her only out of pity. Children were forbidden to play near Nia, she heard them say. If the river gets angry, it will swallow the whole village. It all started with that girl. Each word was a knife, yet Amma stayed silent. One cold, rainy afternoon, Amma went to the little chapel and lit candles. On the altar, the flames wavered. Smoke curled into shapes like fish scales. She knew the water was crossing every boundary, and the stranger was more than human. That night, she opened the old wooden chest that held rags and her worn Bible, pressed a hand to her heart, and whispered, "Give me strength to hold her here." Out on the river, in the dark, Khalil stood gazing toward the small house. He felt Nia's heartbeat traveling through the water, matching his own. Beneath the human skin, his golden scales caught the moon. He knew he could not wait much longer. The promise made to his parents in the deep still bound him, find the one destined for him, bind the two worlds again. Yet when he looked at the faint lamp glowing inside the shack, his heart grew heavy. Between him and Nia stood the mother who had raised her, the mother wasting away in terror. The moon rose, scattering 1,000 golden eyes across the river. Khalil lifted his face and breathed a wordless plea. He did not yet know what he was about to unleash, only that the river had begun to change course and fate was rising like a tide no one could stop. Inside, Amma kept watch beside the bed, listening to rain drum on palm leaves. Nia slept, breathing softly. But outside, the water had climbed the porch steps, and on its surface a golden eye slowly opened, swirling. The night sky poured rain, then fell silent as if holding its breath. The air grew thick as smoke. The river swelled, dark and slow, creeping up through the grass like a silent predator. At the head of the village, drums beat through the mist. Voices murmured. Torches flickered. The people could no longer sleep. They said it was time to cleanse the water of what was unclean. For many nights they had seen the golden light rise in midstream, seen the tall figure standing on Amma's porch. They remembered failed crops, fish bellies white along the banks, children sick with no cause. And like every frightened village, they needed a name to blame. That name passed from fire to fire, house to house. Nia. Inside the little shack, Amma sat motionless by the dying cook fire. Smoke curled low under the palm roof. Palm oil, ash, fear. She heard the tramp of feet far off, blending with the drums. Nia sat beside her, fists clenched in her skirt, eyes full of mist. Through the window, torchlight danced on the walls like countless angry eyes. Amma knew. Tonight, water and fire would meet, and nothing could stop them. The window rattled, then fists pounded the door. A hoarse voice outside. "Amma ni, open up. We only want to talk." Amma stayed silent, fingers tight around a candle, lips moving in prayer. Nia trembled, looked at her mother. No answer came, only the old woman's ragged breathing. The door was kicked in. Wind and rain rushed inside. A big man with a torch stepped through, others crowding behind. Firelight painted their rain-soaked, sweating faces with terror and rage. "We're protecting the village?" they choked out. "That girl is a water demon. If she lives, we lose everything." Amma rose and stood in front of her child, small but unbreakable. No begging, no screaming, only a steady gaze like ironwood smoldering. Rain dripped through the roof, mixing with smoke into stinging haze. The man raised his torch. The flames reflected in Nia's eyes until it seemed the whole world would ignite. Outside, the river began to stir. Not great waves, only small ripples, yet more and more of them, like hundreds of breaths rising together. The wind carried a low murmur that was not human. Lightning ripped the sky, and in that flash, a golden blaze flared through the rain. From the center of the river, a figure was walking forward. Khalil appeared, no longer wrapped in rough cloth, no longer pretending to be mortal. Light burst from his body, golden scales blazed around him, throwing fire across water and sky. Beneath his feet, the river parted and lifted him like a crown to king. That light reached the bank and lit the villagers' horrified faces. Torches dropped. Someone screamed, "The river god! He's come to take our souls!" Panic exploded, torches rolled, fire caught the dry palm roofs, wind whipped smoke, flames raced up walls like red serpents. Amma turned, dragged Nia toward the back door, but the old burns on her legs suddenly seared. She collapsed, pain stealing her breath. Nia tried to lift her, but the moment her hands touched rainwater on the ground, the river outside roared. Khalil surged forward. Light poured from him, wrapping mother and daughter in a cocoon of gold. Thunder cracked. The river exploded upward. Wind snapped ropes, scattered torches. Villagers fled, screaming, begging mercy. Inside the glowing shield, Nia saw Khalil clearer than ever. Hair streaming in water, eyes bright with sorrow and fate. Amma lifted her head, recognized his face, understood. "You've come to take her," she breathed into the storm, the words lost in wind. Khalil knelt, hand over his heart, eyes pleading. He said nothing, only looked at the two women, gratitude and grief shining together. Water rose to their knees, then chests. Rain and river became one. Fires in the village hissed, weakened, died. Only Khalil's golden light remained, illuminating everything. The last villagers stood far off, watching in fear and awe, afraid to come closer. Nia held her mother, felt fever burning through her. The wounds on Amma's legs glowed crimson. Gold spread with every heartbeat. Amma looked at her daughter, eyes wet but calm. In that moment she understood. Water had touched Nia, and the curse was finishing its work. Khalil opened his arms. The water around him spun into a shining whirlpool that lifted Nia and Amma gently from the earth and carried them to the center stream. The whole sky blazed gold, as though lit from within. Thunder, wind, and waves became one wild song. Amma looked back once. The village knelt on the bank, mouths open. She sighed, stroked Nia's hair. Nia wept, but her tears fell into the river and turned to light. In that storm of gold, Amma leaned close to Khalil. She saw no demon, no god, only a being who could bow before love. The water quieted. Wind died. The rain gave one last pour and vanished, leaving the river smooth as glass. Behind them, the village smoked, but the fires were out. Beneath the surface, the golden light slowly sank, only faint streaks left on the wet sand. Amma lay still in her daughter's arms, breath fading. Nia called her name, but the sound drifted away on the wind. Khalil stood beside them, face heavy with sorrow, gazing at the mortal mother who had fought fate to keep the child the river once abandoned. He bowed low, then stepped back into the water. Gentle waves rose, cradled the fading gold, and carried him down. On the bank, Nia sank to her knees as her mother's heart slowed. Moonlight fell, catching the last golden scales that glimmered one last time on Amma's skin before dissolving like stardust. The night grew perfectly still. No one could tell anymore where water ended, where fire had burned, where tears had fallen. The rain stopped completely after that night. The air carried a strange salt taste, like the breath of the distant sea. The ground stayed soaked, but the sky slowly cleared. Wind tore the clouds into rags, revealing a pale, weary blue. The village lay hushed, no drums, no market calls, only the damp smell of smoke lingering like a spirit unwilling to leave. People avoided the river's edge, yet every pair of eyes held a streak of gold, the mark of what had happened. Amid ash and mud, Amma's little shack still stood. Palm roof scorched black, bamboo frame smoked, but the oil lamp inside still burned, a tiny flame that refused to die. On the wooden sleeping bench, Amma lay motionless, body thin, dark skin touched with faint gold, veins glowing like fading threads of light beneath. Her breathing came hard and thin, each one lighter than the last, like wind over tall grass. Nia sat beside her, holding her mother's hand, eyes sunken, tears spent, only silence left. From the mist, Khalil appeared. No one saw him arrive. He simply gathered himself out of the fog. Water drops still clung to his shoulders, shining. His black curls were wet. The gold beneath his skin dimmed. He was no longer the blazing prince of the deep, but a soul carrying heavy remorse. When he stepped inside, the lamp flame shivered and leaned toward him, as if recognizing its old master. Nia looked up, eyes full of pain but without blame. She studied him for a long time, trying to remember in which dream she had first met him. Khalil stood silent, gaze on Amma, respect and sorrow mingled. He knelt by the bed, reached out, then let his hand hover in the air. The light around him trembled, weak as a candle about to go out. Amma opened her eyes. They were clouded, yet still deep as midnight water. Seeing him, her lips quivered not from fear, but from final understanding. She knew this was the river's son, the one promised to the child she had loved and raised with her own blood and soul. In that instant, every curse, every terror, turned into gentle acceptance. She tried to move. Her voice was barely breath. Don't let her regret. Khalil bowed his head, fists clenched, shoulders shaking slightly. He understood every word. It was not accusation. It was her dying wish. He looked at Nia, then back at Amma, and answered in a rough whisper, I will keep it. I swear by water and by light. Nia gripped her mother's hand tighter. On her face, pain and love became one. She no longer feared the mystery surrounding her. All she saw were two beings, one born of water, one born of earth, looking at each other with eyes that held only love, borders erased. Amma's eyes closed softly. Her breathing faltered. A single tear slid down her cheek and fell into Nia's palm. Nia kissed her mother's hand, feeling the last warmth. When the tear touched Nia's skin, it glowed, spread into a pale golden ribbon, then vanished. Amma smiled the faintest smile, like wind brushing reeds. In that moment, she felt no more pain, no more fear, only the peace of a mother who had kept her vow. Outside, the breeze carried palm blossom scent and salt. Nia looked up. Khalil was still kneeling, eyes burning bright yet drowned in sorrow. He stepped onto the porch, faced the now calm river. Early sunlight struck the water, turning it into soft golden silk. He closed his eyes and let out a low, wordless note, deep, warm, traveling through the river's heart. It was the song of water, farewell, apology, promise that this loss would not be wasted. The river answered with widening circles of light, as though the water itself wept. Inside, Nia stayed beside her mother. Morning light poured through the doorway, touching her hair until every strand shone like spun gold. She pressed a hand to her own chest, felt her heartbeat echo the river's pulse outside. The water in her blood was no longer only a curse. It was heritage, the bridge between two worlds. When she stepped outside, Khalil turned. They looked at each other. No words needed. They understood everything between them had been written long before their births. Yet that fate was no longer a chain. It was a path. Nia walked to him, placed her hand over his heart. Beneath warm skin, she felt the river's rhythm. "Mother gave permission," she whispered, voice trembling. "But I cannot go without your promise." Khalil nodded, eyes deep as the riverbed. "I promise," he murmured. "I will guard your mother's soul in the water, the same way I will guard you." The words dissolved into the breeze, but the river mirrored them, rippling in soft agreement. Golden light flared once more, bathing their faces until the world held only the two of them. They stood on the bank a long while as the water slowly receded from their feet. Nia looked back at the shack where a thin thread of smoke still rose from the spent lamp. She knew she would never again hear that familiar lullaby. Yet she also knew that every time water touched her skin, her mother would be there in the light, in the breath, in the river that never stops flowing. Khalil laid a hand on her shoulder, gaze tender but waited. No more words passed. Only the river kept singing its endless song of parting and reunion. High above, a thin cloud drifted aside, revealing the full sun. Light poured down, molten gold, wrapping them in invisible arms. At the same moment, a faint voice rose, source unknown, perhaps from the river's heart, perhaps from Naya's own. It was Amma's voice, gentle and far away. "If you are water, I will be the bank. If you are wind, I will be the lullaby." Khalil lifted his face, eyes closed, letting the melody pass through him. Nia smiled through tears. The sky seemed to bend low and listen. And deep in the river, the golden light rose once more, not fierce now, but peaceful, like the promise of souls who had finally found rest. Dawn the next morning rose slowly, wearily. Thin lights scattered across the swamp, melting into dew that glittered like salt grains on the grass. No more rain, no more wind, yet the air stayed soaked, as if heaven and earth were mourning something lost. Inside the little shack, the oil lamp had gone out. Only blue smoke curled in rings, rose, and vanished. Amma lay still, breath faltering on the border between human and water. Nia had sat beside her mother all night, eyes ringed with shadow, fingers still laced with the thin, cooling hand. Amma's skin had changed from deep brown to ash gray, then to the pale gold of river water catching sunrise. Nia knew. The thing her mother had feared most had come. Water had touched her. The curse was finishing its work. Out on the river, the surface lay unnaturally calm. Sunlight struck it and broke into countless drifting flecks of gold, like pollen shaken from a dying body. Khalil stood on the bank, gaze fixed on the shack, fists clenched. He heard the river calling Nia's name, but the call was threaded with a low moan of wind, more plea than command. He knew that to break the curse, a life must be paid. Yet in his heart, the weight of respect for this mortal mother pressed like stone. Amma opened her eyes, clouded, yet still holding light. She looked at her daughter, at the young man born of water, then at the river, lying smooth as a mirror. She was no longer afraid. Her fear had turned into love, and that love had become strength. She understood. For her child to live, for the river to stop its claiming, someone had to become the final bridge. She called Nia's name in a voice like dry leaves. Nia leaned close, ear to her mother's chest, listening to breath as faint as breeze. Amma smiled, lips trembling. "My child, don't let me die because of you. Let me die because of love." It was not lament. It was choice. She struggled upright, fingers clutching the bed frame, legs shaking yet eyes steady. Nia burst into sobs and clung to her, but Amma gently loosened her daughter's arms. Those fragile hands were still strong enough to push fate the way she wanted it to go. She walked slowly toward the door, each step heavy on the wet earth. With every step, the gold beneath her skin burned brighter, spilling out in a soft, misty halo. Khalil stood motionless on the porch, not daring to stop her. He understood. This was something only a mother could do. She walked straight to the water's edge. The river opened its arms. The surface rippled and glowed. She paused, turned once to Nia. Their eyes met, and in that instant both knew it was the last earthly look they would share. Amma took one more step. Water touched her feet. Light exploded, fierce enough to tear the sky open. Pain beyond words seized her. Yet she made no sound, only drew a deep breath and let it dissolve into the river. Golden scales bloomed across her skin, patch after patch, until her whole body blazed, reflecting the sun like molten metal. The light poured into Nia's eyes until she could not breathe. She tried to run forward, but Khalil held her shoulders, voice breaking. "It is the only way. Let her be free." Water rose, wrapped Amma in a vast cloak. She lifted her face, smiled at her daughter, the same gentle smile she had worn the first time she held the infant Nia. Pain eased, light softened, melted, merged with the river. When the surface grew calm again, her body was gone, only widening circles of gold drifting away, a broken moon on the water. Nia fell to her knees on the bank, trembling fingers touching the river. The water was no longer cold. It was warm, tender, like her mother's palm. Her heart shattered, then filled again with something new, grief braided with peace. Khalil stood beside her, eyes wet, hand half raised. The river began to sing. A wordless song, long and low, spreading through the village, through grass and trees and human hearts, carrying Amma's voice. "If water touches you, I will be the water. If you call, I will return in your breath." The sky shifted. Dark clouds gave way to soft amber, and the wind carried a new scent, early palm blossoms. From a distance, the villagers saw the light, said nothing, only knelt. They understood. No angry god had come. A mother had paid the village's debt to the river. Nia stayed on the bank, hand in the water. Droplets slid over her wrist, leaving tiny, glowing trails. For the first time, she felt no fear. Water was no longer the enemy. It was part of her blood, memory, breath. She closed her eyes and heard her mother's voice, no longer far away, but right beside her. Khalil knelt too. He touched the water, voice low. She broke the curse with love. From now on, no one else will have to pay. The wind took his words and carried them away. Nia opened her eyes, looked into Khalil's golden gaze where the quieting river was reflected. In it, she saw herself, her mother, and a new world opening. They sat together a long time. Waves lapped gently, like a hand stroking hair. The sky cleared. Birds passed with thin cries. Everything was peaceful, as if pain had never existed. When the sun began to set, its last gold fell across Nia's shoulders, mingling with the light still lingering in the water. She spoke softly, unsure whether to Khalil or to her mother's spirit. Mother became the water, and I will be her song. She bent, touched her lips to the river. Warm water wet them, and in that moment she felt her mother's hand rest lightly on her hair, soft as passing wind. From the center of the river, a small wave rose, flashed once, then dissolved like an answer. The swamp sank into stillness. A new era began, no more curse, only love flowing with the water, quietly through every soul that knows how to love. After that night when the golden light surged and broke, the Louisiana River stayed silent for 7 full days and 7 full nights. No waves, no fish leaping, only pale steam rising like mist, carrying the mingled scent of salt and palm blossoms. A long farewell. No villager dared set foot on the bank. They stood far off, gazing at the mirror-still water that had witnessed both tragedy and miracle. On the 8th morning, something wondrous happened. While fog still clung thick, a slender song rose from the old bank, clear, distant, as if someone were singing beneath the surface. Birds lifted from the reeds, perched on willow branches, and listened. The villagers looked and saw Nia. She sat on the familiar flat rock, white dress soaked, long hair stirred by the breeze. Sunlight struck the water clinging to her skin and turned it to soft gold, the very color they had once feared. But now no one felt threatened. The glow was gentle as breath, gentle as prayer. No one spoke. Some elders knelt, palms together. They whispered Amma's name, whispered the river's name, then bowed. Others simply stood and let the wordless song wash over them. A song that seemed to recount every loss they had seen, every fear they had sown. When Nia reached the final notes, the river answered. Thousands of tiny ripples of light spread outward, each one a hand waving goodbye. The water had turned kind again. Fish rose to the surface, white foam bubbled softly, the stench of rot was gone. After seasons of rage, the current now murmured like a mother rocking her child. Slowly, the villagers returned to market with baskets of shrimp and fish. They no longer called Nia water demon. They called her child of the river. Whenever they passed Amma's old house, they bowed and laid a palm blossom on the porch. Nia herself had changed. She still lived among them, still rendered palm oil, still lit the lamp each evening, but her eyes held a new depth, peaceful yet endless, as though an entire underwater world flowed inside her. By day, she helped mend roofs torn by the storm. By night, she walked to the bank and sang for the river. Whenever her voice rose, the village slept without nightmares. One slanting afternoon, Khalil returned. He stepped straight out of the river, wearing plain cloth, no longer blazing with gold. Beneath his bronze skin, only a few faint sparks remained, like stardust. He walked slowly through the village, and for the first time, no one turned away. Children stared, then smiled. An old woman tapped her cane on the ground and said softly, "If the river spirit brings peace, then stay." He nodded, eyes gentle. When he reached the bank, Nia was already waiting. They said nothing, only looked. Late sunlight painted the water gold. They seemed to dissolve into the same bright frame. Mist rose from their feet and shimmered. Khalil placed a hand over his heart and bowed, not as God to mortal, but as one equal to another. His voice was low as wind over water. "The river is cleansed. Your mother's blood became water, and the water has become mercy. I did not come to claim you. I came to stand watch with you over what she left behind." Nia smiled, eyes glowing softly. "We will stay," she answered, "so that no one ever fears the water again." Together they looked down. Beneath the clear surface, golden scales drifted like dust of light, dissolving into the flow. Perhaps it was Amma's sign, perhaps only sunlight. But in that moment both knew. Her love was still there, moving with every pulse of the river, every breath of wind. Time passed. Season followed season. The little village grew prosperous again. People fished and sang in the fields once more. And every year, on the anniversary of Amma's passing, the villagers gathered on the bank and floated hundreds of palm blossoms downstream. Nia stood among them, hand in hand with Khalil. When the petals touched the water, gold spread across the surface, then gently faded. No one was afraid. Everyone believed it was the mother's way of returning, touching their hearts one more time. At night, Nia and Khalil walked the river path. Fireflies drifted around them, small, warm lights. She leaned her head against his shoulder and said quietly, "Mother chose to dissolve so I could live. I cannot let her love remain only memory." Khalil nodded. A mother's love never dissolves. It only changes form like water when it rains, when it flows, when it becomes a tear. They paused beneath the old willow where Amma used to sit. Wind shook the leaves. Nia touched the trunk and watched the moss glow pale gold. In the breeze, she heard a warm voice. "I am still here, where water meets the bank." A single drop fell onto her hand, warm as the palm that once held hers. Nia turned to Khalil, smiling. "Do you hear her?" He nodded slowly. "I hear her. And I hear you." The gentle song of the water. That night the river shone. Moonlight and gold braided together, sketching the shape of a woman in the sky, arms spread protectively. The villagers looked up, bowed, and whispered prayers. They no longer feared the river, for they knew a mother kept watch inside it. From then on, people say that whenever rain falls in Louisiana, the river never rises high enough to destroy. It only sings like a lullaby. And if you listen closely on quiet nights, you will hear a woman's voice entwined with her daughters, a song of forgiveness, of love, and of water returning in peace. That year, the dry season came late. The rains withdrew, yet the river stayed full and so clear one could see long strands of green weed swaying like hair along the bottom. Fish schooled thickly again. Water birds returned. The sky looked washed, soft and bright. The villagers believed the river had truly been healed, that Amma's spirit still guarded them from within the current. Nia was no longer the frightened girl of old. She had become the one people sought when the water darkened, when fish vanished, or when a child fell ill. They called her Keeper of the Water. No one doubted her anymore. They came bearing rum, flowers, prayers, and on every full moon night she walked to the bank carrying her mother's old oil lamp, lit the small flame, and let its glow spill across the surface, blending with the deep gold beneath, until the whole river lay draped in sacred silk. Khalil stayed. He lived between worlds, no longer fully God, no longer merely man. By day, he helped mend boats and taught the fishermen to read the river's moods before storms. At night, he slipped beneath the surface, carrying light to the small creatures of the deep. People said that when moonlight struck the water, you could still glimpse a pair of golden scales flashing far below, a quiet reminder that the river had its guardian. Nia and Khalil built a small house on the exact spot where Amma used to sit. They spoke little. Each dawn, Nia floated palm blossoms on the current. Each dusk, Khalil played a low, steady tune that sounded like the heartbeat of the earth. Their love was not blazing or tragic. It was gentle as the river itself, giving, flowing, silent. One night, beneath a perfect moon, Nia dreamed of Amma. She was no longer frail or sick. Her hair streamed long and golden. Her eyes were kind. She stood in the middle of the river and smiled. "You kept your promise. The water is at peace. The people are at peace. Now let me drift." Then she melted into a ribbon of light and was gone. When Nia woke, the river outside was humming the softest lullaby. From that day on, a palm tree grew where Amma had once rested. Its trunk leaned toward the water, leaves deep green veined with faint gold. People said it was Amma returned in the shape of earth and water. Beneath its shade, Nia often sat with the children, telling them the story of the mother who became water. She taught them how to listen to the river, how to see light inside darkness. Years turned. The river became the village's soul. Every windy season, they held the water festival, dancing and singing along the banks. Beneath the moon, Nia wore white, hair braided with palm fiber. Khalil beat the drum, and when she sang, the whole river blazed awake. The song told of a mother who sacrificed herself so the water would stay gentle, of love that joined two worlds, of forgiveness, stronger than any curse. On the quietest days, people swear they still hear Amma's laughter somewhere in the ripples, mingling with small waves. Whenever a child was born, Nia came to the river, sprinkled a few drops on the infant's brow, and whispered, "This is mother's water." And Khalil, each time he rose from the depths, carried in his cupped hands a few glowing droplets, thin gold like morning mist. He placed them in Nia's palms and said, "This is the river's breath, and hers." No other vow was needed. Between them, the promise had become the river's own bloodstream, flowing, endless. One late afternoon, watching children play fearlessly along the bank, splashing and singing, "Gentle water, water is mother," Nia felt perfect peace rise inside her. She knew Amma was there in every drop, every breath, every soft slap of wave. She laid her hand on the surface. The water was cool and warm, at once warm. A breeze passed, rippling the river like arms drawing her close. Khalil came to stand beside her, fingers tightening gently on her shoulder. Together they looked far downriver. Sunset spilled gold everywhere, over water, over sky, until the world of humans and the world of water became one, with no border left between them. The river had been reborn not only with water, but with memory, with love, with forgiveness carved deep into every heart that beats along its banks. Night falls. The river sings again with its ancient voice. Amma's lullaby, Nia's heartbeat, Khalil's quiet whisper. Water is no longer a threat. It is the witness of love, the soul of those who dared to give everything. They say that if you stand on the banks of the Louisiana, when the moon rises, you will see a ribbon of gold glide past, and you will hear a distant song calling your name. It is not the voice of gods, but the reminder of mothers that true love never disappears. It only changes form, from water into rain, from breath into waves, from an embrace into the glint of light on the river's face. And so, dear friends, the story ends here. A river healed, a village restored to faith, a mother who became water so her daughter could be free. Amma's love is not far away. It is flowing around us, in every drop of water, every tear, every hug from those who remain. If you're watching this, please leave a comment and tell me, where are you right now? And is the water near you as gentle as this river has become? Share this story with someone you love, so they too will remember. A mother's love, even when it turns to water, never stops flowing.